Hello. And if you're watching this video, then you should consider yourself a very, very lucky individual. Why is that, you might ask? Well, because tonight, I will be telling you a story. This is a story that I have never repeated since it was passed down to me by my father on the night of his death over 20 years ago. If that doesn't make you feel lucky, I don't know what will. More specifically, this story is about a knife. This knife. And I'm sure you're looking at it thinking it's nothing more than a bog standard hunting knife, to which you would mostly be correct. However, the story attached to this knife is anything but standard. To give a bit more context to the story before I tell it, my father was an avid woodsman and very handy with a knife. He taught me everything he knew. We'd go camping every other weekend if we could, but that all stopped the day he died, and I grew very attached to his knife, never putting it down if I could help it. But I'll put it away for this story. When my father was a younger man, he found himself hiking through the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains with a group. At the end of their third day's hike, my father was ahead of the group by some ways, so he decided to stop and make camp while waiting for them. He made fire and dinner, which consisted of a can of tour beans along with a duck that he'd shot earlier that day, all mixed into a pot. He sat and enjoyed his dinner, the fresh night air, and his fire. Now, the thing is about campfires is that they provide a wonderful, warm, bright glow. However, they can also hide what might be lurking just out of sight. After his hearty meal, my father decided to sleep instead of waiting up for his lagging group. So, he took to a sleeping bag and slept under a ceiling of stars. Once asleep, my father was known to sleep through just about any noise, so the sounds of the forest must have been akin to a lullaby to him. However, something woke him that night. His fire had died down a considerable amount, so the only light there was from the moon. My father sat, a curled-up sleeping bag larva, with nothing but his knife tucked into his pocket. He stared into the black forest for what must have felt like hours, with no confirmation of anything actually being there. Only instinct. Until he saw 2 lanterns in the distance. His group had finally caught up with him. He stood up and out of his sleeping bag, but as soon as he stood there, he noticed the lanterns. They were still there. But why weren't they moving? Had they stopped? He then realized that these were not lanterns. He was staring into a set of eyes, evil eyes, locked onto him. He froze where he stood with the most primal fear he'd felt in his life. The creature was low to the ground as it walked into the light. My father began to reach for his knife, but just as he did, it reeled back onto its hind legs, growing to be the height of a man. And with the face of one too. My father screamed, and just as the creature looked like it was about to attack, there were some yells nearby. The group was here. When my father looked back at the creature, it was running off into the dark forest on its hind legs. He told the group that it was a bear.
Ladies and gentlemen, I seem to have forgotten a rather crucial detail in the retelling of this story. The night that I first heard this story was the night I saw my father kill himself. Not in the traditional sense, rather. I saw my father murder himself. Eviscerated and consumed with his own knife, and I fear that tonight I will befall a similar fate. And regretfully, I've also failed to inform you that the mere conversation that I've shared with you tonight has marked you as a target as well. I deeply apologize and prepare to give you my first and final adieu. If there's anything you can take from this tape, I just ask you to remember, if you see yourself anywhere that isn't a photograph or a reflection or a videotape like this, run. You need to run, because I can't. Thank you.